It's time for another Seattle Kraken Power Play!
Really? Another one? What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken, thanks to a lot of time on the power play, defeat the Anaheim Ducks for the second straight game, this time 4-2, as 5 of the 6 goals in this game were scored on Kraken power plays, and yet 2 of those were scored by the Ducks, but either way, the Kraken come away with the win, and fortunately, they don't lose that much ground when it comes to the picks, as a lot of the other teams around them in the draft order also ended up winning games. So really, the only downside of the night, other than giving up 2 shorthanded goals, is unfortunately the Mariners did lose to the dreaded Red Sox on opening day, but they've got plenty of games to make up for that. Well, I don't know if dreaded's the right word, but maybe more disliked. As for the Kraken game against the Ducks, though, with it being the second game back-to-back against the Ducks in just 3 days' time, it can often be the case in a regular season when you play the same team twice in a row. The second game can get, we'll say, weird or wacky or sometimes out of control, and this game definitely got away from the officials a bit, and not necessarily to their fault. I do think that they stepped in as quickly as they could, and they called the game pretty tight. It's just that, well, the Ducks in particular didn't seem too interested in what the officials wanted to do. They were bound and determined to get at least their pound of flesh, even if it wasn't going to happen on the scoreboard. And that, I wouldn't necessarily call it dirty, though I wouldn't argue with you too much if you wanted to call the Ducks game in this one a dirty one, but certainly undisciplined to say the very least, which has kind of been a theme with the Ducks all season long, as after tonight's game they edged significantly closer to 100 more penalty minutes than the second place team in the Florida Panthers, with over 1,000 already on the season and more penalty minutes than the leading team from each of the past few seasons. So yeah, it's been that kind of season for the Ducks, but even in a season like this one has been for the Ducks, this night stands out in particular as they have 11 minor penalties called against them, and then 1 major on top of it for fighting midway through the game, a fight that Tanev doesn't necessarily get the best of, but yeah, 27 penalty minutes against the Ducks with just the 1 major for fighting. Usually, if you see that many penalty minutes, there's a couple of fights or maybe a misconduct for 10 minutes thrown in. Nope, the Ducks pretty much earned all of that. And that's all after sending the Kraken to 5 power plays in the game previous. So as the game gets started, with the Kraken sending out the same lineup and pretty much same lines as the game previous where they shut out the Ducks, with the one exception of Grubauer net instead of Decord, it gets off to kind of the start you would expect, although it's actually the Ducks on the power play 10 seconds in as Burakovsky has a pretty obvious trip. The Kraken kill that off and go straight to the power play themselves, which also gets killed off. And then from there, the Kraken kind of have to survive this first period, as the Ducks really do come out at least trying to make up for their lack of shooting in the previous game, with that franchise record for the Kraken at fewest shots against of 12 in the previous game. The Ducks nearly equaling that in the first period, with, at the end of it, 10 shots on goal in just this first period, though that would not keep up over the course of the rest of the game, which is aided by the Ducks getting 2 power plays in this first period. But as we get to the second, with the score still 0-0, this is where things start to turn a little bit towards some lack of discipline for the Ducks, as the Kraken end up on 3 power plays over the course of this period, which is most of the offense they end up getting in it, and it's the second one where they do eventually score. And the only reason I'm saying eventually there is because it is the 3rd power play for the Kraken in this game, and by this time in the last game, even without as many power plays, they already had a 3 or maybe 4-0 lead midway through the second period, but 9 minutes in, their second power play chance, and it does not take them very long on this chance to end up getting the goal, as they win the faceoff, keep the offensive end. McCann gets it down to Eberle down by the goal line. He works it towards the net and then just shoots it through the crease, where Schwartz, who's been forced to the ice with a Duck laying on his back, has his stick down in the middle of the crease, and Eberle's pass through the crease goes off that stick and right into the net, banking it perfectly like he's playing pool or something into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead and the power play goal. So for Schwartz, it's his 13th of the season, with the majority of those, now 7, coming on the power play. Eberle picks up his 24th assist of the season, but 400th in his career, and McCann picks up the secondary, his 29th of the season. And on top of all that, it wouldn't take the Kraken much longer to get on the power play once again, and they go right back to this same play with this first unit, who wins the faceoff, stays in the offensive end for well over a minute to start out this power play, and tries the same thing a number of times, with McCann passing it down to Eberle the goal line, then Eberle trying to get it across the crease to Schwartz on the other side. Unfortunately for the Kraken, though, Dostal did learn from the first goal and was able to make a pretty nice save on the next attempt by the Kraken on that same play, and then broke up the next pass. But then the third opportunity the Kraken get on this power play, Eberle fakes the pass and then tries to just sneak it in the corner, hoping that Dostal will bite on the pass for a third time, but Dostal is able to keep his toe to that post and shuts down Eberle's attempt to fake him out and score anyway. So by the end of all of it, with the Kraken unable to score on this third power play of the period, fourth of the game, we go to the third period with the score still 1-0 Kraken. And then with this third period, well, it's pretty much played entirely on the power play for the Kraken. The Ducks do get one chance on the power play themselves, but they don't even make it all the way through that power play before flipping it into a Kraken power play with a couple back-to-back penalties within just a couple seconds. They go to 4-on-4 and then right into a Kraken power play. The Kraken, for those of you that have been keeping up with the mental math, had 4 power plays coming into this period, so they end up drawing 7 more calls over the course of this third period alone. Although, with all that being said, it's possible, though unlikely, possible mostly from a storytelling perspective, that the reason the Ducks send the Kraken to that many power plays over the course of this third period is that the first one the Kraken get in this third period early on does not go very well for the Kraken, as right off the faceoff, the Ducks win it, and then it's a few passes through the neutral zone. They get through the Kraken defense entirely for a breakaway and score on it shorthanded to tie the game at 1. Which, these things happen, learn from the mistakes. But I mean, at the same time, it is the Ducks. They're not a very good team, and they've been incredibly passive on the penalty kill, giving the Kraken all the space they could possibly want, not only in the 5 power plays the Kraken had in the previous game, but also the 4 they've had to this point. So it's not like it's going to happen a second time. Right up until halfway through the power play, it happens a second time. The Ducks this time strip the puck off of Logan Morrison right at the offensive blue line, which isn't ideal, but it's also his second game in the NHL. And there's still 2 guys that could have stopped this from turning into a breakaway. Neither one do. It does turn into a breakaway. And while the first shot is saved by Grubauer, the rebound goes right back to that guy as he closes in following the shot in. He puts that one into the net, and it's 2 shorthanded goals within a minute to give the Ducks the lead. And no, the Kraken don't score in the final minute of this power play to at least make up for one of those goals. At least the good news is the Ducks don't score for a third time on this Kraken power play, but they do go to a power play of their own shortly after it. Now, this is the power play that, like I mentioned, the Ducks really don't do anything with, and eventually, 2 penalties later, in quick succession, send the Kraken to not just a power play, but a double minor as Zegras gets called for a bad cross-check on Tanev. Now, on the replay, and I don't know if they said or talked a little bit more about it on the broadcast, but on the replay, it certainly looked like Tanev ends up getting a penalty here for interference on Zegras, as he definitely did interfere with Zegras. He lifts him up and takes him down from behind. The official's arm goes up, you can see it in the replay, but then Zegras turns around and gives Tanev a really bad cross-check in the back while Tanev's not looking, and regardless of why the official's arm was in the air, it's that cross-check that draws the call. Zegras heads to the box for 4 minutes, and the Kraken to the power play. And it's on this power play that the Kraken get another very good chance in tight. That one a good save again by Dostal. But about a minute later, it's Burakovsky circling up to the top, firing a shot off right down the slot. And on the way to the net, the shot is tipped in through traffic past Dostal. No chance for him with the redirection. The Kraken tied on the power play, as all 4 goals in the game at this point have been scored on Kraken power plays, even though the score is tied at 2, so that's not necessarily ideal. Either way, the Kraken tie things up, and it isn't McCann who ends up tipping this in. It ends up going off the defensive stick of, I think, Vetrano for the Ducks into the back of the net, so it is Burakovsky's goal. The Kraken, the second power play goal, and they stay on the power play, having tied up the game. But even though they do maintain momentum and get a few more chances on the second penalty, and then back at 5-on-5, and then in another power play that follows a few minutes later, they aren't able to take the lead back until they do go back to 5-on-5 after the second penalty, the third or 4th of the period against the Kraken. It's hard to keep track. The 4th penalty of the period against the Kraken also comes up empty. At 5-on-5, just as it comes to an end, the 5th guy gets out on the ice, but doesn't have a chance to change. It's a Cartier shot off of a beautiful pass from down in the corner by Gord, a one-time shot into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 3-2 lead. Cartier, his first goal in quite some time, even in spite of a lot of chances that he's had, just has been snake bitten. This shot is perfect, though, into the back of the net, and it gives the Kraken that lead, like I just said. Again, this was a bit of a chaotic period, so it's hard to keep track of everything that went on. And if you thought the chaos was done here, either you haven't been counting the power plays or you can't count to 11. Either way, you would be wrong. There's still more chaos, and another Kraken power play almost immediately after this Cartier goal. This one they aren't able to score on, but midway through it, they do draw another call for a cross-check. The Ducks basically at this point using their sticks more to hit Kraken players than the puck. So the Kraken get a chance at 5-on-3, which they don't score on, but just as the 4th guy comes back out on the ice, the Kraken back to a conventional power play. It's a shot on goal by McCann that is tipped in, this time by a Kraken player. It's Matty Beniers with a beautiful tip out in front of the net that redirects the puck from going into the near side out to the far side. Beniers picks up the goal, McCann his third assist of the game, and the Kraken take the 4-2 lead with their third power play goal of the game. And it is finally with this goal for Beniers, his 12th of the season, with McCann again and also Burakovsky picking up the assists, that things finally start to, well, I don't know if calm down is necessarily the right way to put it. It's still pretty chippy between the two teams. In fact, saying it was a chippy third period would be putting it pretty lightly. Either way, the power plays have come to an end for this game. There was a couple more things the refs probably could have called, but just decided that enough was enough. They clearly weren't going to get a hold of this game by calling penalties or trying to actively break up scrums between the two teams when they happened, and they did happen pretty frequently. They just decided that at this point it was clear the two teams just wanted to go at each other, especially the Ducks wanted to go at the Kraken, so they let that happen for a couple more minutes. Eventually the Ducks go empty net. The empty net isn't hit, but they also don't score, so we get to the final score of 4-2 like you've already seen. So it's a game for the Kraken. They pick up 2 more points in the standings, which isn't necessarily ideal, but they do come back from giving up the lead in the third period to end up winning the game by multiple goals. Again, fighting back, showing some resiliency, and getting a lot of practice on the power play. Now, at the same time, with how this game went, and really even the game before it against the Ducks, which although that one wasn't quite as chaotic from a penalty standpoint, it was a game where the Ducks just couldn't get out of their own way. It might make it a bit of a tough transition for the Kraken when in a couple nights they play against a much better and much more disciplined Dallas Stars team. Either way, we'll see how that game goes. Obviously, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if the Kraken lost that one. And you know what? The Stars are good enough that if the Kraken fight and play a good game and still lose by a goal, I wouldn't be too disappointed by it. In fact, it would help them in the standings. And I mean, yeah, basically all I'm asking for at this point is just don't get embarrassed, and especially not on home ice where you don't have that many home games left. As for any other takeaways from the game, well, again, with a game like this one, it's pretty hard to have any takeaways as it was not played like pretty much any other game you're likely to play for a very, very long time. You do not see 11 power plays very often, so for the Kraken, yeah, it's just kind of a one-off. Maybe play a little bit more disciplined on the power play, even if you're going to get a lot of them. Yeah, if you make mistakes and give up shorthanded goals, especially against better teams that aren't going to give them right back, that could become a problem next season when it matters. And as for the young guys, which does include Riker Evans in this game as he makes his return after missing the previous game against the Ducks and most of the game against the Habs that he got injured in the first period during, none of them were terribly noticeable, certainly not as much as the previous game, which I suppose is a good thing that they weren't noticeable in a bad way, and that can be the case as you're getting used to the NHL and the second game up in the NHL in at least a while, second game in the entire career of Logan Morrison, but even Ryan Winterton hadn't played since way back in November. Obviously, Riker Evans has played a little bit more since then, but he's coming off of an injury, his first in the NHL. So good that they weren't noticeable in a bad way, but yeah, not terribly noticeable necessarily in a positive way either. I suppose Morrison did have the one turnover that led to the second shorthanded goal, but that was way up at the offensive blue line, so there were still 2 guys behind him that are veteran players and could have made up for that mistake. And at the very least, it's the type of thing you learn from, and it didn't cost the Kraken ultimately in the game. And with that, it can bring us to our last segment of the video, as usual, the Kraken 3 stars, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide the Kraken 3 stars after every Kraken game and help decide channel Kraken awards at the end of the season, you can help support the channel a little bit more than you already are by going to the link down below and supporting over on Patreon as well. Anyway, as far as the 3 stars are concerned, Patreon didn't disagree too much with the official stars, so we will stick with those 3 official stars. Both Grubauer and Tanev did also get mentioned over on Patreon. And I'm going to mix up the 3 stars a little bit. I'll still go with the first star since he was the one that everyone was focused on and did play a fantastic game. He really has had, for the most part, a good season with the odd mistake here and there, and it is his rookie season. But Ty Cartier played a great game for the Kraken. He does end up getting the game-winning goal with the third one and the only goal in this game that came technically at 5-on-5, even though it was right after a power play. So there's 5 Ducks out on the ice, but they barely had a chance to set up defensively. Either way, a great game from Cartier. He gets that goal off the good pass from Gord. And then with the second star, I'm going to move McCann up here from where he was officially the third star. 3 assists on the night, and to me, he was the best Kraken player out on the ice. And then the third star, Andrei Burakovsky, also had a very good night. I mean, it's not too much of a surprise that 2 of the guys that feature on the first power play unit end up getting on the score sheet with some consistency when the Kraken spend well over a third of the game on the power play. So Burakovsky with a goal and an assist, McCann with 3 assists. They'll get the second and third star, with Cartier getting the first. Like I said, plenty of other guys played good games. Beniers gets a goal. Tanev and Grubauer both played very well in their own right. Grubauer does give up the 2 goals on the breakaway, but made some pretty good saves as well, including making the first save on the second breakaway. Just the rebound happened to go right to where the guy was skating, and the back checker couldn't catch up in time to prevent that back rebound shot. Either way, let me know what you think down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars would be, and how we're feeling about the Kraken coming out of back-to-back wins, which does feel a lot better than the 8-game losses they came into those 2 games with. And does help, at least a little bit, for me anyway, to lessen the sour taste left in the mouth with how the Mariners season opener went. With that though, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoyed the video, the buttons for that kind of stuff down below helps support the channel. Like and subscribe, of course. So I appreciate using them. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!